And I think everybody knows everybody, so I don't think we need to do introductions today. It is a day of informal discussion, which I expect to focus around COP26 mostly. I know I just looked at my email after lunch and saw that Eric has a 3-minute video he'd like to share. So I don't know if we want to start with that, but we can certainly get to that at some point. Do you want to just dig in with that, Eric?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Don. I also have my signature mug for this morning. There we go.
Nice.
Very nice.
So thanks. This was the video that I've been working on, in partnership with the Digital Storytellers group that Deb Morrison had set up through here. The partnership between Clear Environmental and them, and so it's kind of a unique opportunity. It's going to be shown in one of their Blue Zone workshops tomorrow morning. Well, my morning, 4:30 my time, 12:30 GMT. So I'm trying to figure out the registration process virtually so I can do a little Q&A around it. But here, let me bring it up. I queued it up already. So let's see. And can you all see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So the context of it is basically the opportunity was to share a personal climate story. So how did I get interested in the climate space? So that's kind of the backdrop of it. But it's kind of a larger project that I've been, stewing on for a while and thinking about other more connections to other things that we're doing. So a lot of this has actually been informed by the conversations we've been having as part of CLEAN too. So anyway, here you go. Earth's climate is changing due to human activity, and it's impacting all life on our planet. At the same time, many people are taking action to help solve the climate crisis. My name is Eric, and this is my climate story. I'm a climate science educator. My interest in the environment dates back to my childhood. I was raised and live in Oakland, California, one of the most culturally diverse cities in the United States. My dad was a high school science teacher. My mom was an environmentalist. They shared a passion for nature. I grew up home gardening, recycling, and taking annual camping trips to the Redwood Forest, where I gained a deep appreciation for nature. There were two pivotal experiences during college that sparked my interest in climate change. The first was Al Gore's work in the late 1980s and early 1990s to address ozone depletion and climate change. The second experience was in a geography class. I learned that I live in a Mediterranean climate zone, characterized by cool, wet winters and warm, dry summers, and that there are 4 other regions around the world that are like mine. I think of them as our climate brothers and sisters. Both of these experiences raised my awareness for how Earth is being impacted at the global scale by human actions and inspired me to explore new questions. What is climate change and how are humans contributing to it? How will our 5 regions be impacted? What can we do about it? Students at one Oakland Public High School are taking action. They're learning about environmental stewardship and climate change by caring for a community garden located on their school site. They're learning the power of growing their own food locally and how this can help to reduce their carbon footprints. In addition, to help those that are food insecure, they're donating their produce to those that don't have enough to eat. I had the opportunity to interview one of the student leaders about her concerns and experiences. Here's what she shared.
Obviously, a small scale garden on its own is not going to be necessarily making a huge impact on the climate, but collectively, if every school has a garden, that can definitely make a difference. And I think that just students kind of an earlier age getting experience with gardening can really be helpful in terms of shaping their future careers and what they prioritize in their lives.
In California, we're in the middle of our worst drought in the past 100 years. Our freshwater reservoirs are at all-time lows, like those of our climate brothers in Cape Town, South Africa, and central Chile. Our wildfire seasons are becoming longer and more severe, like those of our climate sisters in Australia and the Mediterranean basin. One of my life goals is to better connect us all together to learn from each other and help each other out. And so the time to take action is also now. My name is Eric, and this is our climate story.
Awesome.
Fun video, Eric.
You did it. You did it.
Hey. Thanks a lot for letting me share that. Yeah, it
That's
was
great.
just, I felt really honored to be have that opportunity. It's sort of a story I've been wanting to unpack for a long time. And it, I think I mentioned during one of the conference calls or multiple of them that during COVID, it gives you a chance to reflect a little and sort of unpack some of that more deeply. So, and kind of refocus ourselves on the work. So anyway, yeah, thanks a lot. I'm excited that it'll get shown and maybe part of a.
Where are you going to be able to show it?
It's in the Blue Zone, I guess tomorrow 12, I think it's noon GMT at COP. So digital story.
Okay, so what's the blue? I don't understand all the zones. What's the
I actually don't either, Tamara. Yeah, so I haven't even quite registered because there will be a chance for live Q&A if I can get myself registered. But I think it sounded like what Deb said was there's like green zone, blue zone, and there's certain access privileges that you get with signing
on the
up.
website? I only saw the green zone. I didn't see the blue zone. That's why I'm
Because I
asking.
think the blue zone's the more restricted. I don't know this for sure, but the way Gina, who's at COP26 now, explained it to our group was that there's the negotiation space, which is really the people who are, state officials, politicians, like the actual people, like have their really restricted space for negotiations. I don't even know what zone that's called, negotiations or something. And then the blue zone is where all the delegates are able to do things and attend events and things like that. And so the blue zone was like where Gina, the Wild Center and the Climate Generation and some of the people have like more of the official delegations going to COP go and host events and try to kind of influence the negotiations through that area. And then the green zone was more of the like open, you could just buy yourself a ticket to Scotland and go and be able to be part of the green zone, which is like that's where a lot of the protests and other things like that happen. But there's also other events that you can engage in as well, I think, and it's much more open. It's kind of like anybody can attend the green.
Online you can go to any of the, you don't even have to register. You can just click on the button and watch it live.
Right.
It
So
may
that's
be
how
that if you want to ask questions, you may have to register, but I was just trying to see what I could find.
Yeah, so that's exactly, that would be right with the green zone. I think it's anybody can attend at any time. Basically, it's fairly open, much more open than the blue zone is more restricted. And then the negotiation space
It's
is
interesting.
really
The website
restricted.
doesn't refer to the blue zone at all.
I think that's because it's more restricted and it's the people who are involved and the delegates that really know about that more.
Okay.
And I think what the Digital Storytellers is sort of the main host. I submitted like my passport information this morning and just personal, birth date and all that. And then I think they may register me just for the one day, just for that one time slot to sort of be available to do a quick Q&A around the videos, because there were 2 other creators too. So if that works out, then that I guess would give me access to that. And if not, the videos will still be there, so that's great to hear. Thanks for the clarification on the green zone, Katie and Tamara, because I think that's some stuff that I'd like to jump into too.
I was also able to watch yesterday the recordings of the open plenary. So all of the, nation leaders that got up and talked then, you're able to watch. They posted them all to YouTube. So you can see, it just takes a lot of time. I watched about 3/4 of the opening session yesterday.
And the Guardian newspaper has nice selected quotes from those talks too.
That would be
Guardian
nice.
has a lot of good coverage. Other announcements?
Mine's somewhat related. I have an announcement where, well, first of all, we're doing, so the COP event. So next week we're going to have, and sorry for my email being incorrect this morning. There's been, COP is crazy and everything's changing and all of that. So I was going what was on the schedule, but there was also the transition we had between Patrick and Gina, and I don't know who put what on the schedule and all of that. So Kristen's actually planning for next week to call in from COP with the Climate Generation delegates, which I thought was more other people from Clean, but anyways, that's beside the point. So next week we're gonna have a big clean event, Clean Network Call event. So join us for that next week.
And it's at our
on
regular
Tuesday.
time, right?
No, regular time, exactly. Yeah. So they'll call in from there because it'll be kind of, I think 6 p.m. or something like that for them. So they'll be able to, they said, be able to join us and talk about what's been going on. So we'll have, I think Gina, but then Jen Kretzer and Kristen and several other folks. I hope Frank can join. And several other folks from COP calling in and try to get some of the other delegates that are part of the Wild Center and Climate Generation groups there to join us as well. So we'll connect with them next week. And prior to that, the hour prior to that, Gina, who's our new clean coordinator, but also been part of the board and all this the last few years, involved with the Wild Center and some of Frank's efforts as well. And all, she's been pretty involved. She's at COP and she's doing an event for much more kind of general audiences, teachers, students, and anyone who's interested through our series education outreach group. So the link to that's in the chat if you want to connect with Gina and Max Boykoff, who does climate communications work. They're going to host an event where she calls in the hour before the clean call next week on Tuesday. And then I will just, since I have the time, put in the plug that I would normally put in this time of year, which is Clean is still doing our webinar series for teacher professional development. So this is separate from COP and just that's the link for that. So if anybody wants to let teachers know we're still doing those.
So the event that she's doing is separate from your regular webinar series, or it's part of your?
Separate from the regular webinar series. Yeah. So Clean's helping with this, but it's a little more hosted on the series E&O side and connecting with Max Boykoff on campus and things like that. So just a little bit more, yeah. Clean's, a lot of our stuff's really geared towards teachers more, and that was geared more to general audiences and students and whoever wanted to connect. So just made sense to do a little bit more on the series side of things rather than specifically hosted by Clean, but we're helping to market and get it out there and all of that. So definitely connected.
Okay, great, thanks.
And I mentioned before that we're doing a webinar tomorrow that will have both Franks and more. At 4:30, it's the target audience is educators, though I'll note that we were thinking mostly of K-12 educators, and probably that's about a third of the folks who have registered so far, and a third are undergraduate and a third are something else, which is all good. So.
Do you know if the members of our community that are there, do they hear about the progress of the negotiations, or is this all something that's kept real quiet until the end?
My guess is they get the news in the same way that the news gets the news.
Okay.
I think so. I think to some extent that's what Gina was saying, that there's more intermingling of people in that blue zone than there are of like in the green zone. That's much more open. So I do think to some extent the delegates have more ability to interact with negotiations. So they may hear about things kind of secondhand, from people that kind of go in between those two. But I think, I don't know. I still think, yeah, Dawn's right that they probably still get their news the same way, that the news people are probably in there.
But you're
first,
suggesting that the
first
people
and
in the blue
foremost.
zone can influence negotiations?
That's what Gina had said in our group meeting last week when she was talking about it. So I think there is some communication two ways, and people do have some amount of access.
Well, it
to
could be, I mean,
information
it
more
could
than
be
we.
this is just a guess, but it could be that people in the blue zone can go to those presidential program events, presidency program events, which seem to be for the really credentialed delegates. It seemed like it's all national leaders and that kind of people.
I know that, for example, our series, the National Snow and Ice Data Center, they have a pavilion there and they talk about sea ice. So they bring experts so that delegates could go around and talk with people about impacts of climate change. So I think they are, there's opportunities for conversations, and because I think it's so restricted and so secure that there can be conversations and leaders can walk around in a fairly safe environment. That's my understanding. Sorry, Jim, though, I didn't see your hand. I think I totally talked over you.
Of course, that's fine. No, that's fine. Oh, you're such a rude person. Not. Comparing notes on this one, on that, there is, of course, by having regular people, let's just say not big government people with a lot of power, there is the sense for the governments that people really care about this. I mean, that it's on the ground, that it's busy. You can't go out and not see lots and lots of people. So, I mean, that's a form of influence, whether or not people can talk to the government leaders or influence them and things. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're having people go. Yeah, I mean, that's one. Another one, and be curious how this is playing out in the COP. I'm saying this all provisionally, and people tell me where I'm off or whatever, is there is a chance to talk to people from around the world and to meet people like a conference on another level. And there is, so what are those conversations? How are we working with other people internationally? What arrangements are being made that, may not be directly talking to the government, but educators talking with educators, talking with young people, doing things. That's all important. And how is that playing out in the COP conferences? I think each one has some similarities to the other ones, but not to the others. I mean, what can we accomplish even if you're not talking to such, you're going to be influencing the actual negotiations per se? Anyway, that's thinking in itself. Thanks.
I think also we've been in conversations with Quakers that have invited us, UK Quakers that have invited us into conversations with other Quakers around the world, as well as other interfaith communities. And in turn, I think there's opportunities not only for the international connections, but crossing sectors, because you have people there from faith communities, from political communities, from technology, business, etc. And they're all focused on problem solving and influencing what's happening, which isn't, depending on where they're coming from, isn't ideal, but most of it, I think, is bringing the potential for bringing into more alignment, along with educators, what it is that may emerge as solutions that move people, and finding language with each other that helps articulate things that we can come together on. And that in turn may, in its own indirect way, influence the decision makers.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's all about constituencies then influence the people that represent them. And that's just, it just takes a lot of people that are spread out all over everywhere in order to get that to happen. It's sort of building this collective political will to push the negotiations, or push those leaders to make the appropriate concessions when needed to get something done.
And I see Frank has joined us. I don't know which one.
I have. This is the Frank Neapold, not the Frank Bradshaw.
Oh, the Frank Neapold.
Hey, Frank.
Frank,
How are
nice to
things
see
going?
you.
Frank Neapold.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just getting some food after our launch of the US ACE Coalition at COP26.
Okay, so Frank,
Wow.
I was kind of looking at all of the WhatsApp messages, and is that just a physical space, or is there, because at one point there seemed to be a link to a live stream, and I saw you in a box along with two other people in separate boxes, but you
Yes.
never said anything, and it was only like 3 seconds, and then it went off to a logo, and it just kind of cycled between that, a logo, and then some noise, and then back to you just sitting there, and then the logo. And so like I was trying to figure out if I could see anything.
Well, that's disconcerting. There was a lot going on. So I would go back to the US Center for, US Center for Climate Action, I think it is, and look at the YouTube Unfortunately, right now, it seems like they've just left the channel open for all day. So you have to kind of like scroll down through a lot of time in order to find
Okay.
the 1 hour segment.
I only saw this, I clicked on the link within WhatsApp, so it was just on my phone, and I don't know if
I see.
that caused problems, but it was just before this call, so. And I just finished
Right.
teaching my class before this, so I didn't have time to look too hard.
Yeah, I understand. So I hope down the line they will segment those into individual events as opposed to, but you know, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, no, it was a full 1 hour of programming with lots of people
I couldn't,
speaking.
was that on the website? The programming for that was on the web? I just, what zone is that
Maybe.
in?
So it's in the blue zone.
Okay, that's why I
In the
couldn't.
US, it's in the US Action for, Climate Action Center or something like that, US Climate Action Center, which is the pavilion of the formerly known as We Are Still In, now as America Is All In coalition.
Okay, I saw that in the WhatsApp, but when you go to the website, you don't see anything about a blue zone.
Oh, don't worry about the blue zone. That just has to do with what part of COP it's sitting in. There's a green zone and a blue zone.
All right, online, you only see the green zone. So
Well,
this is a pavilion for what? America Is All In, is that what you said?
yeah, but yes, but that's called the US Climate Action Center, I believe.
Okay,
Once we're done here, I'll find the link for you
okay, great.
because I'm
Thanks
on my
for
phone,
making the
obviously.
connection for me earlier today. I did speak to Tim. He gave
Good.
me the lowdown on how the actual negotiations happen, and I was able to describe that to the students in my class. He also told me about the one of the other constituency groups, and since I have business students, there's a business and industry constituency group. And
Yep.
so I'll try to dig out more information about that for them.
And just to bring everybody else in, Tim Damon is one of the two gurus on the COP process as it relates to education and ACE, and Izati Centron is my other wonder kid of COP process. So both of them are just amazing at providing. It's a super complicated international process. But it does make sense if you have somebody who can guide you through it.
Yeah, one of them was actually up late last night there. It was about 9 o'clock in the evening here when I messaged Frank, and he connected me, and one of them was still up, but he said it was going to be 1:30 in the afternoon there when I had my class. He said he'd answer me in the morning. We ended up talking this morning, so that was great.
Yep.
Other announcements, and I see Abby has joined us too. Other things you want to talk about?
Don, did anybody, since the event was to launch the US ACE Coalition, I guess I should announce that the US Coalition has been announced and has launched. And there's the logo right there on that pin.
Very nice.
So yeah, very nice. But it's a powerful consortium. Yeah. It's kind of like if CLEAN was always a network of network, this is another level up of CLEAN. So
you said this is the US ACE Coalition?
Yes, US ACE Coalition.
But haven't we been involved with that like the past months?
Oh, absolutely. But the actual because let's just break it down to the simplest process. And this is something, Tamara, and for everyone who's been involved in CLEAN, we've learned is simple tools to connect us on learning and sharing. I have a need, who could help me? Or I have something that I've done that's pretty powerful, who could I help share it with? It's the same thing at the international level. And ACE just provides a bit of a wider framework, but still the basic principle of coalition building and networking, not working, whatever you want to call it, is still true. And so the ACE Coalition is kind of like, is trying to enhance the ACE work in the United States, which clean, I mean, most of the leaders of the ACE coalition are clean network members and leaders. So it's just a natural evolution of what we've done into a wider framework and into an international context.
But it still says US, but do you
Yes.
facilitate international partnerships?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why they're at COP26.
Okay. And so
because
the announcement was as an official part of COP26 or just part of the US program?
I don't know. I wouldn't say it is an official part of COP26, but it happened at COP26. But I mean, yeah, I think, official process. I mean, I'm an ACE focal point, but my job is to share effective practices, learn from what's going on in the United States and share it internationally, and then bring what's international back into the domestic. That's my core responsibility as the ACE focal point. But when you have networks of organizations and entities who really can self-determine what they want to share, and you can go sideways as opposed to up to government and then across to government and down to a non-party stakeholder, as they call it, is actually a much more efficient, authentic, and effective and where there's no narrowing based on what government's comfortable with. And so I think that's it's the same thing that Cleans does, it's just with a wider framework and an international context. That cool?
Yeah, very good.
All right.
Frank, how's the vibe there? The news is very mixed on looking towards COP, but how does it feel being there?
I'm not there.
Oh, you're not there.
This is my house. See my house right behind me. I'm
I
at
thought
home.
you were there.
No. So what happened is that the United Nations shrunk the party delegations, countries, in half because of COVID. And then the United States sent a huge contingent of very high level administration leaders. Deb Haaland, Secretary of Interior, Villasek, Buttigieg, and some administrators like ours from NOAA, Rick Spinrad. And every one of those people aren't a person. They're a whole swarm of flag officers and security and staff. So the delegation got chewed up with negotiators, which have to be there. And I'm not one of those. And then the high level delegations of all of the secretaries and administrators. So that's pretty much who's there. So I am not in, but I am living COP through this little handy dandy thing called technology. But I am not actually physically there. So no COVID test for me.
So have you just sort of shifted your time zones that you're awake during the day for these 2 weeks?
Oh yeah. Yeah. At 5 o'clock is the earliest I start Eastern time. I haven't done anything earlier than 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I noticed the event that one of the events I was thinking of having my students watch was live at 5:30 in the morning. I told them they could watch the video.
Yeah.
So a question, if I might. I would think as things unfold, when is it appropriate for those of us who are not there, or when we share things, to be saying, the people who are there, and the people who are heavily connected, they're working on it right now. And then later, let's get to a report, or let's compare what we note, right? I mean, you have to give people the right in the middle of it. So raising a question of when it is the time of, very curious to hear what happens on the education and the regular people and the empowerment part of, for instance, Frank, there would be the question, for instance, what are the other focal points from other countries saying? We know that other countries aren't doing the same thing or the same way that the ACE coalition is, but what are they doing? And what are they saying? How are those conversations going? How is that happening? We want to make sure, I have confidence when you're doing this and things. Good things are going to get our COP on that front, right? We have a lot of things that we can hope for and we can work for, but those are a little bit out of our hand we have great people making sure that this works. But it's like, when is the time that we start being able to dig into what took place?
So if you don't know, Climate Generation, the Wild Center, Global Council for Science and Environment, the Action for the Climate Emergency, all of these kind of leading ACE coalition members have delegations swarming COP26, actively engaged in everything that's going on there. So I know if you read the daily digest from Climate Generation on COP26, it's available on their website. Jim, you would get a firsthand account, well written and polished, per day by different members of their delegations. So I would highly recommend that. Now, obviously, for those who know, and Abby, I imagine you might be one of the ones in this group, they are negotiating, and my counterpart, Olivia Urbanski, is the ACE negotiator for the United States, the follow-on work program for ACE, which was called the Doha Work Program. They're negotiating exactly what the next 7, 5, 10 years of work internationally on this is, as we speak. So that's actively going on as one of the major things that's being negotiated. So Jim, I don't know what's going to come out the other end of that process. I'll learn just like you will, but then the doing of it is where I think it will be very interesting to see how we can rise to that and play a significant contribution in that work program. In the last work program, we didn't play a significant role in the actual work program, even though the United States was doing some amazing, important, significant, innovative work, but we just weren't really taking that last step, which was international collaboration. We were really focused on nation and down. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing from the spirit of these conversations is to extend our collaboration networks up into the international. I think that's what I heard from the ACE delegation conversations, from the people who are there, that this is really an opportunity for collaboration. Sorry, I'm just ranting on here, but the key word in Article 12 of the Paris Agreement is collaboration on basically ACE. And I think that's something that we as a community can do a much better job of. And as part of my job is to help lift up your work into the international context, and then back down if I learn of something amazing that's being done in Ghana or Dominican Republic or India or anywhere else in the world. So that's kind of that new architecture that we're just starting to understand how to work. But if I don't have a clean network to work with or an US ACE coalition, it's really hard to actually fulfill that government function.
Yeah, great. And I mean, taking for instance, like on the ACE focal point level, looking at the UN site for Ghana, the person, and boy, it's going to be a tough way, but the first name is Emmanuel from the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana. So, I mean, you kind of like, what are these folks saying? How is that going? So, I mean, again, I'm not necessarily trying to get a report now. It's more at some point. I'm very curious at that level because, I mean, really, please, your answer was right. We need to be studying. We're doing it. I will say I'm doing that. It's wanting to know what are the others saying? What are the places to go to get the news of what all these other focal points are saying and doing? So, well,
unfortunately, Jim, the answer is not great, and it's not because they're not doing the work. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But the mechanisms for sharing and collaborating just are not robust enough. I mean, we have that same is true of the United States, but it's also true for the rest of the world. And so the sharing and learning, the only really official tool is something called the National Communications. And it's not the greatest tool. It's a governmental report that's submitted every 4 years. I'm the lead for the chapter that relates to our work. The White House just released yesterday the 7th National Communications And inside there is chapter 9, which has a tremendous amount of work, a sampling, let me say, a tremendous sample of what we do as a community, but it is not a comprehensive work. So Jim, the work you do in your organization is not represented in the National Communication Act. There's just no way to capture all of it. So we're really struggling, and I think it's an issue we all share, is how do we learn from each other, and how do we share something that we're doing that is worthy of sharing against somebody else's interest or need. You know, and Abby, I see you putting some ECOS links in here, and I think ECOS is another network that's trying to do that work. But you know, as we all know, that's only as good as the partnerships and resources, staffing. It's heavy lifting work, and so unless we start really building out much more robust mechanisms and roles and responsibilities that are professionally supported, it's going to be really hard to do what you're asking for, Jim. There's pieces, but it's just not organized in a way where the infrastructure is in place to do that robustly yet. Okay.
No, and thank you on that. I don't want to monopolize, I want to say, but if I ask questions, they're definitely coming from an optimistic standpoint. I mean, they're asking questions that are probing for positive news, right? Because I know there is positive things and things. And one I would say in this context of we wish more, and you know, not to repeat the kind of things you say, is one of the ways that things can start to come to life sometimes is, what are the issues? What are the debates? What are the controversies? Or maybe what are people complaining about? And I don't mean in a whiny way, but I mean, what are the things, identifying the things that are holding things back? What are the things that are, why isn't it happening to the way we want to have happen? Because, you know, the thing of to get to where we want, it's you first identify your problems and either crush them or you get around them or you something or other. So I mean again, I'm probing for positive. I'm not trying to harp.
So if I remember right, Don, do I remember right that next week representatives from the clean community are going to be with us at 1 o'clock next Tuesday?
Yes, the regular time we will be connected to Glasgow next week.
Right. So as a prelude, Jim, to answering your questions, I think the best people to answer that are the people who are swarming, looking, listening, talking, learning, you know, collaborating right now. I mean, my WhatsApp channel is notifications are firing off as I'm looking at you today, right now. I'm not paying attention to them because, you know, I'm talking with you, but there are people who are really, really deeply unearthing what's going on in there. And, you know, I mean, this is the strength of what Clean has always been. We're a network member organization, and you know, all of us bring different capabilities at different times, and I think that next Tuesday would be the beginning of that exchange. What did we learn from COP26, and how does that inform our work going forward?
Can I jump in a little bit? Hi.
Hi.
Absolutely,
Hey, all you guys. Hey, you know, I'm really happy to hear that, Frank, that you know, some of the folks that overlap with Clean that are, you know, on the team on site in Glasgow are going to be here next Tuesday. And I was able to jump in. I'm sorry I was late. You know, was looking forward to hearing from folks from the Climate Gen delegation. So hopefully we'll get to hear from them as well. But will there be people like Deb and Isati, some people like that on the call next Tuesday?
I don't remember who's there. Katie, do you know?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think anybody's told me exactly who's going to join. Jen and Kristen are sort of organizing the call in, and they have their climate generation and their Wild Center delegates. I know Gina Fiorelli is part of that. Deb Morrison is there with them. I would assume Matis is, you know, she's there with them in pictures and things like that. I would assume she'd call in as well. I think it's going to be as many of them that are connected to Clean that they can get to kind of be there with them, but I don't know the names quite yet. And I think that's all in flux because everything's changing.
Yeah. And it, you know, it's such a dynamic situation there at COP, and you know, and what's great in my experience of being in these meetings is that, you know, it really kind of takes a while for coordination to take place on the ground for the civil society participants. But by like tomorrow on, it'll really gel, and the sort of the cohesion happens in the on-site people. And I'm sure it's just going to be hugely informative when they get on. And I really strongly recommend that there be representatives from ECOS, you know, and clean, sort of overlapping, and also the people who are in the local indigenous and community group, because there's a lot of overlap between, in my opinion, between what ECOS is doing in terms of capacity building and civil society outreach and public engagement, and that group, which is getting a lot of access and a lot of ability to sort of have a say at higher levels in the COP process. And so some of our people like Deb and Isatis, and I imagine Jen is right in the middle of that, and so on. So I think that will be very informative. The other, in terms of the links that I provided, the one is to ECOS, which is the stakeholder group, for those of you who don't know, for education communications outreach of the UNFCCC. And on that link is actually, you can sign up to the WhatsApp feed and be seen in real time, just the conversation that's going on between people that are there and people that are supporting them from afar, like myself and Frank and so on. And then the other one is actually a newsletter that comes out daily that summarizes, from the point of view of an education organization internationally, the Climate Action Network, what has happened at COP, so in an overarching sense, including along the lines of Article 12. So, or is it Article 6? I get those two mixed up. Anyway, Article 12 and 6.
Six of the agreement, 12 of the Paris Agreement. I mean, it's 6 of the treaty, 12 of the agreement, the Paris Agreement.
So I think those are two good sources, in addition to what Frank is saying, for sort of tracking what's going on, and sort of, I think they, you know, so there's a lot in motion and a lot at play right now in the next couple of weeks, but then it'll land. And then sort of to James' question and Frank's point, then it's, you know, it's about firing up the networks that we're all part of to, you know, take and run with the next phase of this. And I'm wondering what's happening at AGU along those lines, because I know that's right on the heels of COP and happening in New Orleans. And I'm wondering if that wouldn't be a really rare, you know, ripe opportunity to gather some people together here in the US to really launch, you know, out into our networks from the results of COP.
Abby, would you like me to respond to that?
Yeah, whoever can. That's just, yes, please.
So, I mean, AGU historically has played a critical role in advancing our community in lots of in crucial ways. So, you know, I'll go back to the 2017 AGU, where we really confirmed that education and all the work we do in clean is crucial, essential to to communities advancing climate actions. But there they challenged us to help them with jobs. What we're really interested is, how does your work relate to jobs in climate action and solutions? So, you know, there's a strong lineage of AGU playing a crucial role in a node of our community in time. So I would expect everything to continue. How much is virtual and how much is face-to-face at AGU? Who knows? It all depends on how COVID goes. But I think you're spot on to call the next part of that work And just to help with those who are on the call, I'm not looking at the list. One way to think of ECOS is, I would say the US ACE Coalition is a network that is like a US based ECOS. Because ECOS really has the article, the full ACE approach, which Clean has part of, but it doesn't have the whole scope historically. And there's a strong relationship between Clean and US ACE Coalition. But then you go up to the next level, it's actually ECOS. But in order to be representative of anything, you have to have a structure that allows you to be representative. And so I think those networks are wonderful for doing just that. But it's a great point, Abby. We should keep an eye on what do we do at AGU to convene this community about post COP26.
Frank, could you
Thanks, Frank.
articulate some of the major differences between, I mean, I know they're different, but in terms of activities between the US ACE Coalition and Clean?
Sure. So historically, training government people on how to work with communities wasn't really a strong suit of Clean. To focus on public participation as opposed to public awareness. And so it's pushing Clean to really look at a wider set. And also I would say that the US ACE Coalition at its foundation brought in the BIPOC climate justice element at it from the foundation, as opposed to something that Clean has been trying to move to.
Say that again?
I think
I'm not sure I quite followed.
the BIPOC
What's the BIPOC?
audiences,
Oh yeah,
and the
okay.
focus on equity and justice as a foundational element, as opposed to what Clean really had. It didn't have that root. We're getting there, but they are starting there. And so there are some key differences. And the other one I would say, because it's attached to or inspired by the international framework, one thing that Felicia Davis said at the event, and she's that's her perspective, and I appreciate where she's coming from, is the gender equity element of our work is it's just not here yet. It's not to say it can't be, but it's flagged because of the leadership of the international process and the work in other countries. But in the United States, we just don't have a strong gender equity climate focus yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's emerging, but but there's some key differences between the two bodies of work and who's representative.
Okay, thanks. One thing on a separate note that I just wanted to point out, because it was a little striking this morning. I teach 2 sections of undergraduate business students, and I had a whole piece today about COP26. My first question was how many had heard of it, and of my on the order of 40 students, 2 had heard of it, and that's sad. That they weren't even aware of it was pretty sad. And so it's these kinds of communities that are not usually engaged that we need to make sure we eventually reach, whichever organization or grassroots effort we're all involved with.
I have a good friend who's the executive assistant to the CEO of Accenture. I don't know if you are familiar with that company, but I think they've got on the order of 500,000 folks who do a lot of business management, organizational leadership development, and so globally. Mm-hmm. And she had not heard of COP26 until 2 weeks ago. Mm. So to your point, I think it's across sectors that the that's why we do what we do.
Exactly.
Our work's cut out for us.
Yeah, if I could add something for Abby on the AGU. So I'm just bringing a piece in. This is not trying to look from our perspective per se, but AGU is often a thing to me. It's you see different people and you go out there with ideas, you do things, and you see what resonates, what gets interest and what doesn't, what connects with people, what doesn't. You don't just go to give your thing and go home. You want to see how other people take it. And you want to see what other people do. two of the presentations that our teams are working on or whatever, and that also includes the Clean Network and bringing it in. To me, it's going to be curious to see how they're reacted to. Okay, the first one is by our middle and high school students going into the middle and high school part of the AGU, the Bright Stars, and right in the title, what the focus is taking the science that we have learned at AGU over the years by being part of AGU and applying them to solutions, because it's very real. We've learned from AGU, taken that science and come up with new pioneering techniques in energy efficiency to make Washington, D.C. more energy efficient. And that's a whole different approach than Bright Stars really gets into. I mean, it's more, there's much more research and things. This is taking action first, but using AGU. So, I mean, I don't see how it doesn't resonate with what AGU is supposed to be about. But is AGU ready to go into solutions? You know, does it do that? Are the students ready? I'm going to be curious to see, does what we're doing resonate, or is it be okay? We're doing what we're talking about, but other people aren't interested. That's going to be interesting. You know, that's the kind of thing. The other one, another of the three presentations we have is precisely on an approach of always taking on climate education and climate action directly linked to DEI and social justice, that the two must be connected, or bringing together programs that have been approaching it that way, right? Not all places approach that way, but have a consortium of organizations that's the way they approach it. And I'm also curious to see where AGU runs with that, because one of the things that I know I've tried to influence in AGU and doesn't necessarily always get a lot is, if we're talking about DEI, we're looking at this, and AGU is talking about it. Do we start in the younger years, or we just wait to talk about it in undergraduate level? Right? Are we ready to do science of AGU science and action, but working with elementary, middle, and high school students? Is that something that AGU is ready to talk about? I'm interested to see how they react to it. Now, we're going to bring that in, but I'm interested to see what that happens. I mean, you know, to me, sometimes you bring things in, it doesn't fly, it doesn't go anything. You still do what you do, right? You don't. Oh, okay, they're not for it, so we're not for it. But it's going to be curious to see that when it happens. I'm not going to try and shift away from it, but just not to keep you popping in too much. One thing I was kind of looking at, talking to ECHOS, was asking in what the ECHOS people are seeing around the world, around supporting ECHOS and education and empowerment for young people. Which countries from the federal level or their national level are supporting that, are encouraging that, if others don't particularly want to push it? And they, for instance, a couple of the examples they gave back was Italy, Austria was examples, places where, you know, the government was really saying this, what ACE is about is good. A curiosity was that I was looking up, well, who are the ACE focal points for Italy? They're both ministers. So that was kind of an interesting thing of, you know, how does it play out? Because we want to see who are the ones who are going to be our friends and want to do things, who are going to want to help Frank and not push against it. They're ministers of the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Ecological Transition, they call it. So interesting to see, you know, how does it play out in these different countries? So anyway, those are two different subjects. I'm not trying to make one over the other.
Yeah, and I just stuck a link in the chat, you know, thinking about the solutions piece. And I've mentioned in the call before, but maybe not everybody was here, that we're part of the outreach team for Cornell's Deep Geothermal Heat project, which intends to heat the entire Ithaca campus with deep geothermal, and they're drilling a 2-mile deep hole on campus in early 2022 to figure out if it'll work. I'm very excited about that. Heat is about half of Cornell's energy use.
It's exciting, Don.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Has the potential to be zero carbon.
Jim, just to name a couple of countries that are doing some of the most amazing, innovative, comprehensive ACE work that would include what you're describing. Dominican Republic, Ghana, Chile, and Argentina are some to name a few. And there are other examples around the world and a lot of commitments, but doing the deep, heavy work. Those four stand out, and I've been studying them carefully at NOAA to learn from how they approach it, because it's pretty. I mean, government's government, but still, that's really the approach they're taking is really inspiring. Literally, like, it inspires me to do different things by learning from them. That's, and just so we're clear, this international dimension isn't just we're doing great things, here you go. I'm in a very high learning mode right now.
Yeah, if I would say, we know we're successful when we feel challenged, right? If we go into something and we don't feel challenged, things are not going well.
I will note that it's 1:50
Thanks, Jim.
Eastern time. Yes. So it's about time to head off to my next meeting. Are there any closing thoughts? And nice kitty, Katie.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for the conversation today, and I'm looking forward to next week when we hear from Glasgow.
Yes, indeed. And you can join us tomorrow if you want to hear from Glasgow a little earlier.
Okay, I'll see if I can manage that.
Okay.
See you there,
The
Don.
chat says it's time to end the meeting too.
Thank
What are you still doing over here? Nice to see you all. See you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye, thank you.